Hey there! Ever wondered what happens when top-secret missions and high-stakes security operations go horribly wrong? Well, you're in luck. Today, we're diving into the wild world of security operations that didn't just miss the mark. They crashed and burned spectacularly. From botched invasions to disastrous rescue missions, we'll uncover the jaw-dropping stories behind some of history's biggest security blunders. So, grab some popcorn, sit back, and get ready for a roller coaster ride through the most epic fails in security operations history. The Bay of Pigs invasion, 1961. It's 1961. The Cold War is in full swing, and the United States is getting pretty antsy about Cuba, just 90 miles off the Florida coast. Fidel Castro has taken over, and he's not exactly on Team USA. In fact, he's cozying up to the Soviet Union, and that has Uncle Sam freaking out. Enter the CIA with a plan as bold as it is doomed. Let's train a bunch of Cuban exiles, send them back to Cuba, and overthrow Castro. Easy, right? Spoiler alert, no, not at all. The operation, codenamed Operation Zapata, was a disaster from the get-go. The CIA set up training camps in Guatemala, where about 1,500 Cuban exiles, known as Brigade 2506, were put through a crash course in guerrilla warfare. But here's the kicker. These guys were promised air support and a widespread uprising of anti-Castro Cubans. Neither of those promises held up. Fast forward to April 17, 1961. The brigade landed on the southern coast of Cuba at the Bay of Pigs. Right away, things started going wrong. The invasion force encountered unexpectedly fierce resistance from Castro's troops, who were much better prepared and equipped than anyone had anticipated. Remember that promised air support? Yeah, it didn't really show up. The US bombers that were supposed to provide cover were pulled back due to fears of revealing American involvement. Those that did make it were largely ineffective. And without air cover, the invasion force was left vulnerable. Within 72 hours, the invasion was crushed. Over 100 members of Brigade 2506 were killed, and nearly 1,200 were captured. The Cuban people, far from rising up against Castro, either supported him or remained indifferent. Castro had successfully repelled the invaders, and his regime was stronger than ever. Now, you might be wondering, what did the US do next? Well, President John F. Kennedy had to go on TV and admit to the world that the US had been involved in this mess. It was a huge embarrassment and severely damaged US credibility. Meanwhile, Castro had a propaganda field day, using the failed invasion to consolidate his power and strengthen ties with the Soviet Union. Operation Eagle Claw, 1980. This was the United States' bold attempt to rescue 52 American hostages held in Iran. Things did not go as planned. At all. It's 1979, and the Iranian Revolution is in full swing. The US Embassy in Tehran is stormed by Iranian militants, and over 50 Americans are taken hostage. The world watches as days turn into weeks, and weeks into months, with no end in sight. President Jimmy Carter, facing immense pressure, greenlights a top-secret mission to rescue the hostages. Operation Eagle Claw was meticulously planned, or so they thought. The mission involved a complex sequence of events, a nighttime raid using helicopters to transport elite Delta Force commandos from a remote staging area in the Iranian desert to the US Embassy in Tehran. They would then storm the embassy, rescue the hostages, and fly everyone out to safety. Sounds straightforward, right? Well, not quite. The mission was plagued by logistical nightmares from the start. First, the mission relied on helicopters flying in from the USS Nimitz, stationed in the Arabian Sea. The choppers had to refuel in the Iranian desert at a spot dubbed Desert 1, but the desert isn't exactly the friendliest environment for helicopters, as it turns out. On the night of April 24, 1980, the mission commenced. Right off the bat, things started going wrong. One helicopter developed mechanical problems and had to turn back. Another was hit by a sandstorm, damaging its navigational system. By the time the remaining helicopters reached Desert 1, only 6 out of the original 8 were still operational. The mission required at least 6 to proceed, so they were already at a critical juncture. But the problems didn't stop there. As the helicopters landed to refuel, one of them collided with a C-130 transport aircraft. The resulting explosion and fire killed 8 American servicemen and destroyed both aircraft. With the mission now in complete disarray, the commanders on the ground had no choice but to abort. The aftermath was chaotic and heartbreaking. The remaining helicopters were abandoned in the desert, and the surviving personnel evacuated back to the carriers. The mission's failure was a devastating blow to American morale and a major embarrassment for the Carter administration. The failure of Operation Eagle Claw was attributed to several factors: poor coordination, lack of reliable intelligence, and the inherent complexities of such a daring mission. It highlighted the challenges of conducting covert operations in hostile territory and underscored the importance of thorough planning and robust contingency measures. The impact of the failed mission was profound. It led to a re-evaluation of U.S. Special Operations capabilities and the eventual creation of the United States Special Operations Command to ensure better coordination and effectiveness in future missions. For President Carter, the debacle was a significant factor in his loss to Ronald Reagan in the 1980 presidential election. In the end, the hostages were released on January 20, 1981, minutes after Ronald Reagan was sworn in as president, marking the end of a 444-day ordeal. The Iranian Embassy Siege, 1980. This one's got it all: hostages, terrorists, and a daring rescue by elite forces. But as with any high-stakes operation, things didn't go exactly as planned. On April 30, 1980, 6 armed men stormed the Iranian embassy in London, taking 26 hostages. The gunmen, members of an Iranian Arab group campaigning for the autonomy of Khuzestan province, demanded the release of 91 political prisoners held in Iran. It was a tense situation that quickly escalated into an international incident. For 6 days, the world watched as the siege unfolded. The British government, under Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, faced a difficult decision. Negotiations dragged on, but the gunmen grew increasingly agitated and impatient. When they executed a hostage and threw his body out of the embassy on the 6th day, it was clear that time was running out. Enter the Special Air Service, or SAS. The SAS is Britain's elite special forces unit, trained for exactly this kind of operation. Their mission: storm the embassy, neutralize the terrorists, and rescue the hostages. The plan was codenamed Operation Nimrod. The operation was meticulously planned. The SAS rehearsed every detail, using a replica of the embassy to practice their assault. They had to be quick, decisive, and above all, precise. Any misstep could result in more hostages being killed. On May 5, 1980, at precisely 1923, the SAS launched their assault. It was a textbook execution of speed and efficiency. The commandos abseiled from the roof, blew in windows and doors with explosive charges, and stormed the building in a coordinated attack. It took them just 17 minutes to secure the embassy and rescue the hostages, but the operation wasn't without its hitches. As the SAS breached the embassy, one of the hostages ran into the line of fire and was wounded. Another hostage was killed by the terrorists in the chaos of the assault. Despite these tragic losses, the SAS managed to kill all but one of the terrorists and save the majority of the hostages. The success of the operation was hailed as a triumph of British resolve and military prowess. The SAS's professionalism and bravery were widely praised, and the siege became a defining moment for the unit. The dramatic footage of the assault, broadcast live on television, captivated audiences worldwide and cemented the SAS's reputation as one of the world's premier special forces units. However, the operation also raised important questions about the risks and ethics of such high-stakes interventions. The death of the 2 hostages, despite the overall success of the mission, underscored the inherent dangers and the fine line between success and failure in such operations. The Waco Siege, 1993. So what happens when you mix a heavily armed religious sect with a bunch of federal agents? Short answer: nothing good. Our story begins in Waco, Texas, where a group known as the Branch Davidians, led by a charismatic, and some might say a little kooky guy named David Koresh, was living on a compound called Mount Carmel. These folks believed in some pretty out-there stuff and were stockpiling weapons like it was going out of style. Naturally, this attracted the attention of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. better known as the ATF. The ATF decided it was time to pay a visit. Their plan? A surprise raid to arrest Koresh and seize the illegal weapons. Easy peasy, right? Wrong. The Branch Davidians got wind of the raid, and when the ATF showed up on February 28, 1993, they were met with a hail of bullets. The initial assault left 4 ATF agents and 6 Branch Davidians dead. Yikes. With the raid gone spectacularly wrong, the FBI took over, and a 51-day standoff ensued. That's right, folks. 51 days of will they or won't they that would make any TV soap opera jealous. Negotiations were tense, with Koresh promising to surrender, but then changing his mind more times than a teenager picking out an outfit for prom. During the standoff, the FBI tried a range of tactics to get the Davidians to come out. They cut off electricity, blasted loud music, and even shone bright lights on the compound. Picture the world's worst rave party, and you're not far off. But the Davidians weren't budging. Finally, on April 19, 1993, the FBI decided enough was enough. They launched a full-scale assault using tear gas in an attempt to force the Davidians out. Unfortunately, things went from bad to worse. A fire broke out inside the compound, spreading quickly due to the flammable materials stored inside. By the time the flames died down, 76 Branch Davidians, including David Koresh, were dead. So, what went wrong? Where do we even start? The raid was poorly planned and executed. The negotiations were mishandled, and the final assault was a disaster. The fire's exact cause is still debated, with some blaming the FBI's actions and others pointing to the Davidians' own behavior. The aftermath of the Waco siege was chaotic. The incident led to widespread criticism of the federal agencies involved and sparked numerous conspiracy theories. It also became a rallying cry for anti-government groups and contributed to the rise of the militia movement in the United States. The Moscow Theater Hostage Crisis, 2002. It's October 23, 2002, and over 900 people are enjoying a performance of the musical Nord-Ost at the Dubrovka Theater in Moscow. But their evening of cultural delight is about to take a very dark turn. Enter the bad guys, a group of 40 to 50 Chechen militants armed to the teeth. They storm the theater, take everyone hostage, and demand the withdrawal of Russian forces from Chechnya. Talk about a plot twist. The Russian government is in full panic mode. President Vladimir Putin and his team need to act fast, but this is one seriously sticky situation. You've got hostages, heavily armed terrorists, and a theater rigged with explosives. It's a real-life ticking time bomb, folks. For the next 2.5 days, negotiations are as tense as a high-stakes poker game. The terrorists make it clear they mean business, and the Russian authorities are scrambling for a solution. Meanwhile, the hostages are enduring a nightmare, trapped inside the theater with no idea what's going to happen next. Now here's where things get, well, let's call it creative. On October 26th, after 57 hours of the standoff, the Russian Special Forces decide it's time to make their move. But instead of a full-on assault, they come up with a rather unconventional plan. Pump a mysterious knockout gas into the theater to incapacitate the terrorists and rescue the hostages. Sounds brilliant, right? Yeah, about that. The gas works, sort of. It knocks out most of the terrorists and hostages, but here's the catch. The gas is so potent that it ends up causing serious health problems. The Special Forces storm the theater and quickly neutralize the unconscious terrorists. But the chaos and confusion are just beginning. Medical teams are on standby, but they have no idea what kind of gas was used, making it incredibly difficult to treat the victims. By the time the dust settles, 130 hostages have died, mostly from the effects of the gas. The Russian government refuses to disclose the exact nature of the gas, which only adds to the controversy and outrage. The Moscow Theater Hostage Crisis is a tragic tale of a daring but deeply flawed rescue operation. While the Special Forces managed to eliminate the immediate threat, the heavy toll on the hostages cast a long shadow over the entire mission. The incident led to widespread criticism of the Russian government's handling of the crisis. Questions were raised about the decision to use the gas, the lack of transparency, and the overall preparedness of the rescue operation. It also sparked a heated debate about the balance between aggressive counter-terrorism measures and the safety of civilians. The failures of Operation Red Wings, 2005. It's June 28, 2005, and a four-man Navy SEAL team is dropped into the remote mountains of the Kunar province. Their mission? To track down and take out a high-ranking Taliban leader named Ahmad Shah. This mission, codenamed Operation Red Wings, was supposed to be a quick in-and-out job. Easy peasy, right? Not quite. The team, consisting of Marcus Luttrell, Michael Murphy, Danny Dietz, and Matthew Axelson, stealthily made their way through the mountainous terrain. But in a twist worthy of a Hollywood thriller, they're soon spotted by a group of local goat herders. And here comes the dilemma. Let them go and risk them alerting the Taliban, or take them out and compromise their morals and mission. After a quick debate, the SEALs decided to release the herders and make a run for it. Spoiler alert, the herders ratted them out. Before they knew it, the SEALs found themselves in a fierce firefight with a large Taliban force. Outnumbered and outgunned, things went from bad to worse. The mountainous terrain offered little cover, and the team was soon overwhelmed. Communication was another major issue. They couldn't call for help because their radios weren't working properly in the rugged landscape. Talk about bad reception. In the heat of battle, Lieutenant Michael Murphy did something truly heroic. He moved to an open area to get a clear signal and called for backup, knowing full well he was putting himself in the line of fire. Tragically, Murphy, Dietz, and Axelson were all killed in the ensuing firefight, leaving Marcus Luttrell as the lone survivor. But Luttrell's ordeal was far from over. Wounded and alone, he managed to evade the Taliban and found refuge with local villagers who protected him from the insurgents. In a twist of fate, these villagers adhered to a traditional code of honor known as Pashtunwali, which required them to protect a guest at all costs. Thanks to their bravery, Luttrell was eventually rescued by U.S. forces. Now, let's talk about the rescue operation itself, which was another disaster. A Chinook helicopter carrying reinforcements was shot down by a rocket-propelled grenade, killing all 16 servicemen on board. This tragic loss made Operation Red Wings one of the deadliest days in the history of U.S. Special Operations, the 2008 Mumbai attacks. All right, folks, let's jet set over to India for the 2008 Mumbai attacks, a chaotic and terrifying event that turned one of the world's most vibrant cities into a war zone. Think of it as an action movie, but with far too many explosions and not nearly enough Bruce Willis. It's November 26, 2008, a regular evening in Mumbai. People are bustling around, enjoying the nightlife, and generally having a good time. Enter stage left, 10 terrorists armed to the teeth and ready to wreak havoc. Their mission? To attack multiple high-profile targets across the city simultaneously. Talk about overachievers. These 10 terrorists, members of the Pakistan-based militant group Lashkar-e-Taiba, arrive by sea, which already sounds like something out of a Bond movie. They split up into groups and head for their targets, which include the Taj Mahal Palace Hotel, the Oberoi Trident Hotel, the Nariman House Jewish Community Center, the Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj Terminus train station, and a popular cafe called Leopold Cafe. Their goal? Maximum chaos and maximum casualties. The attacks kick off with a bang, literally. Explosions, gunfire, and panic spread across the city. At the train station, gunmen open fire on commuters, creating a scene of utter carnage. Meanwhile, at the hotels and Nariman House, hostages are taken, and the terrorists dig in for what turns into a multi-day siege. The terrorists are armed with AK-47s, grenades, and plenty of determination. The Indian security forces, including the Mumbai Police and the National Security Guard, NSG, quickly mobilize, but they face a daunting task. The terrorists are well prepared and heavily armed, turning each location into a fortress. The security forces, on the other hand, are caught off guard and initially lack the coordination needed to respond effectively. At the Taj Mahal Palace Hotel, the situation is particularly dire. Fire breaks out, adding another layer of danger to the already terrifying scenario. The NSG commandos storm the hotel, engaging in intense firefights room by room, floor by floor. It's a high-stakes game of cat and mouse with lives hanging in the balance. The siege drags on for nearly 3 days, with the world watching in horror. The media coverage is relentless, and every development is broadcast live, which, fun fact, the terrorists are using to their advantage. Yes, that's right. They're watching TV to stay a step ahead of the security forces. Talk about modern problems. Amidst the chaos, stories of incredible bravery emerge. Hotel staff risk their lives to save guests, security forces battle tirelessly to rescue hostages, and ordinary citizens step up to help in any way they can. Despite the horror, the spirit of Mumbai shines through. Finally, on November 29th, after 60 hours of terror, the last of the terrorists are neutralized. The city begins to breathe a collective sigh of relief, but the damage is done. The attacks result in 166 deaths and hundreds more injured. The aftermath leaves a lasting scar on Mumbai and prompts a re-evaluation of security measures across the globe.